correct? We need to have a place with a certain specification. So, how would we come up with that place and the specification? We would talk with the customers. Like currently, Windows 11, I guess. Just give me a second, please. Is my screen visible to you guys now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Now, so we were discussing test environment now. So we need to connect with our customer or the product owner, and they would be giving us the details that for the software that they want us to develop, what is the requirement or what is the system requirement that they want us to develop for. Okay. Now, in this case, the requirement is Windows 10. It should work on the following browsers: Chrome, Firefox, and Edge. For Mac OS, Safari browser. For Android mobile OS, Chrome. For iPhone mobile OS, that's gonna be Safari. So these would be our testing environments. So we need to test for these operating systems and these browsers. Okay. We need to cover each one of them. We can't just leave anything that, okay, if I've tested for Android, then don't need to test it for iPhone. No, that's not how things work. We need to run the same test cases on Windows as well as in Mac. Similarly for iPhone as well as in Android devices. Okay. Now, one of the most important part, that is the exclusion. What do we mean by exclusion itself? All the features except that are mentioned under inclusions would not be tested. Are we clear? Everything that is mentioned in the exclusion section here won't be tested by the testing team. So we need to mention it clearly that these are the functional aspects that we are not covering. First, all the features which are not mentioned in the inclusion section won't be covered. Second, any third party features or payment gateways. Third part, test automation. Okay. As we are going with the manual project, we won't be covering the test automation here. So that is in the exclusion area. Okay. So these are the three things that the testing team won't be focusing on. And we need to communicate that clearly to our customers as well as all the stakeholders, just to make sure that they are clear what exactly is the testing team working on and how exactly would the product or the software is going to be developed or would be tested in our case. Are we clear? Any doubts regarding exclusion, test environment, or inclusion or scope part itself? Any doubts that you guys might have?
No.
Okay. Now, coming to our next point, that is the test strategy. So, the testing manager has communicated with the OpenCart and understood that we need to perform a functional testing of all the functionalities mentioned in the above scope section. As a part of functional testing, we will follow the below approach for testing. Step 1, creation of test scenarios and test cases for the different features in the scope. We will apply several test designing techniques while creating the test cases. So regarding that test designing techniques, we had already discussed equivalence partitioning, boundary value analysis, decision table, state transition, and use case testing. Correct? So we'll be employing all these testing techniques during our testing itself. We also use our expertise in creating test cases by applying the below error guessing and exploratory testing. So we need to focus that as well. Now, next point, we prioritize the test cases. It's talking about that, yes, we would be prioritizing our test cases itself. Step 2, our testing process and when we get an application for testing. So here it is talking about when exactly do we get the application, how we would start our testing process. Firstly, we will perform a smoke testing to check whether the different and important functionalities of the applications are working. As we have discussed in previous classes, that whenever you start your testing, you need to make sure that the build that you were given is in a testable condition. And how exactly do we do that? We do a smoke testing first. So what does a smoke testing means? We generally check for the important functionalities and whether they are working or not in a correct manner. Okay, and if the important functionalities are working, then we can start our in-depth testing. Now, next point. We reject the build if smoke testing fails and will wait for a stable build before performing in-depth testing of the application's functionalities, what we discussed just now. Once we receive a stable build which passes the smoke testing, we perform in-depth testing using the test cases created. Multiple test resources will be testing the same application on multiple supported environments simultaneously. When they report the bug in the bug tracking tool and send dev or the management, the defects found on the day in a state in status end of the day email. So generally this point depends upon the company itself. So how exactly do the companies want us to report our issues? Whether they want us to communicate over the email itself, or there is any specific bug tracking tool like Jira or Linear. We can even use those tools, whichever the company prefers or the product owner prefers. We'll be communicating the issues using that tool or that technology. Okay. Now, next point. As a part of testing, we will perform the below type of testing: smoke testing, sanity testing. Smoke again, whether the build is testable or not. Sanity testing, if you want to test any particular functionality, you just need to do a sanity testing for that particular functionality first, just to make sure that the specific functionality is testable or not. Regression testing and retesting. Regression testing refers to if you have already tested any particular component, like suppose home page, and a new component was developed, like settings page, then again you need to retest the home page before testing the settings page first. Or when you are testing the settings page, after testing the settings page, you need to test the home page. But the home page was already tested in previous iterations. So the retesting part itself is known as the regression testing. Though there is no new development in the home page section, but we still need to execute all our test cases just to make sure that there is no functionality breakage here due to creation of the settings page or due to code changes. We need to test the functional aspects of other components as well that were previously developed iterations. Okay. Now, next point, usability testing, functionality, and UI testing. Usability testing basically refers to whether our application or our software is in a usable format or not. What do we mean by that? Usability generally refers to as if the software is easy to how easy is the software that you have developed for a newly, I mean for a first time user, not a new, for a first time user. How user friendly have you made that software? That we verify through the usability testing, and whether we are able to cover each and every functional aspect, I mean the usable aspect, that yes, we are able to use everything for the first time, that too without much of an effort from the user's end. Okay. Now, the next point, we repeat the test cycles until we get the quality product. So, we have covered all the test cases. I mean, during the initial test case formulation stage, we had covered all the test cases. Now we need to re-execute those test cases multiple times just to make sure that there is no defect, or if there is any defects, they would be below certain threshold. Okay, like as we discussed, below 10%, below 15%, or there should not be more than 20 open bugs or 50 open bugs at any given point of time. So this is how we do have. I mean, it depends upon the arrangement that we have with our product. Okay, are we clear up until now? Any doubts? Hmm, okay, everyone is silent, then I guess you guys are able to understand everything. So moving forward.
Sorry, I was mute. Sorry, I don't have any questions for now.
Oh, okay, great, Deepen. So, and rest of you guys also, I think you are also able to understand as you have not interrupted me in between. So, we'll be moving forward to the next section. Step 3. We will follow the below best practices to make our testing better. So what are the practices? We'll be going through one by one. Context driven testing. We will perform the testing as per the context of the given application. And where exactly can we get the context of our application itself? It's going to be through the FRs. FRS document. We'll be getting the context. So being a tester, we have already gone through in detail the entire FRS document. So we do have the context, how exactly the application is, what exactly is the vision of the customer or the product itself regarding that website that we are trying to develop here. So we would need to do the context driven testing. So we are developing an e-commerce platform here. So what would be our main focus? That we should be able to search for any products easily. And after searching for that product, we should be easily able to add that product in our cart and purchase that. So that is the main purpose of an e-commerce platform. Find a product and purchase it. So that should be our main objective while we are testing the website. That the process of finding any product and till we purchase it, the process should be as seamless as possible without any hiccups or any major problems, you can say. Okay. Now, after context driven testing, the next point is shift left testing. We will start testing from the beginning stages of the development itself instead of waiting for a stable build. What we mean by that? Like, suppose if we try to wait for the very end, that let the developer complete the entire development process, then we will start the testing. So, what this would mean is we would start our testing at a very later stage, and the time that we might be left in our hand for the delivery dates would be very less. And even very basic issues, like suppose the development process was formulated that first we will develop login page, then we would develop home page, then we would develop settings page. Suppose the development process was designed in this manner. Now, in the home page or in the login page, the login functionality was not working. So we waited for 3 or 4 weeks. We waited for a month or so. And now we were given the entire application. But the login functionality is not working. So we are not able to access our website. So it's going to be a blocker for us, correct? That we are not even able to access the website itself due to login functionality failures. So we are not able to test it. So we would be raising a high priority issue that you need to fix the login part because we are not able to test anything in our application. So developers gonna go ahead and fix that login functionality first. Now that waiting time, again, the entire testing team would be sitting idle because we have already created our test cases. The test plan was even before our test cases, the test plan was completed by our testing manager. So we don't have anything. While the developers are developing, we are just sitting idle. So we are just wasting our time. Even not our time, we are wasting our client's time. So we need to manage the time very effectively just to make sure that we meet the deadlines that have been set by our managers or the product owners. Okay. So in order to cope up with these deadlines, we start the testing phase as early as possible. As soon as the developer has developed any particular module or any particular functionality, we would just ask them to hand over that particular functionality and tell us the scope. I mean, what exactly did the developers develop till now? So if they have developed the login page functionality, just give us that login page. And if we try to log in, just give us a successful or unsuccessful message. So we would be able to test the login part individually. And while you are developing the home page, we would be able to test the login page. And if we encounter any kind of issues, we would be raising it. So while you are working on the home page itself, we would have tested the login page. And if there was any issues, we would have raised it. So while you were working on the home page, you could easily fix the login page issues also. So that would reduce our total time. Okay, and even the testing team would be occupied. They won't be sitting idle. So they would be utilizing their time. Are we clear? Any doubts?
No doubts from my side.
Okay. Now, exploratory testing. Using our expertise, we will perform exploratory testing apart from normal execution of the test cases. So when the entire application has been developed and we are done with our test case execution, then we go for the exploratory testing just to make sure that we try to do something generally very few customers would try, like adding 500 of a particular product or anything else, logging out, logging in, might be playing with the cookies, such kind of stuff, just to make sure that the application is able to handle anything. And while browsing through our software, we do not encounter any major issues that might crash our website. So for that, we do the exploratory testing. Next is the end-to-end flow testing. As soon as the entire development process is completed, now we would be doing an end-to-end process. So in this case, we would be doing an end-to-end, you can say, end-to-end,
Testing.
no, not end-to-end testing. We would be doing an end-to-end verification of the flow. Yes, you can say in a way it's testing only, but end-to-end verification. So the what exactly is the end-to-end verification for an e-commerce platform? You log in that application, or after selecting the product, you can log in. But let us assume that you do the login step first. So we'll be doing the login stuff, then we'll search for the product that we want. We'll search for it, we'll add that product in our cart, we'll enter our details, or we would try to register ourselves first. After adding the product, we can try to register ourselves with all our personal details like email, password, address, and everything. Once we are done with the registration part, we will move forward towards the payment part and make the payment and get the order confirmation that yes, your product has been ordered. Now we'll check for the status update also. So that is the entire end-to-end working of a e-commerce platform, correct? So we need to test that entire end-to-end working, that it is working without any hiccups. That yes, if I'm trying to log in, if my login function, if the login part is my very first step, then also it should work. Or if my login part is not the very first step, my very first step is that before login, I've added 4 5 items in my cart, and then I try to log in, or if then I try to register during my checkout process, then it should be possible. Okay, so we need to test the entire end-to-end flow by all the combinations possible, just to make sure that yes, nothing is out of context here, nothing is out of place here, and we are able to fulfill the vision or the requirement with which the product was developed or the software was developed. Clear about end-to-end flow testing?
Yes.
Okay. And silence from the other person. So we are good to go. Now, defect reporting and procedures. During the test execution, any deviations from the expected behavior by the application will be noted. And if it can't be reported as a defect, it can be reported as an observation or issues and or posed as a question. Suppose, let us give an example for it. Any deviation from the normal behavior. Let us assume that the normal behavior for the application while we click on the home page button or the icon itself was to navigate us to the home page itself. But if we click on the home page, I mean the icon, the website icon in the home page itself, then nothing happens. So we can ask the product owner or the customer a question. What exactly do you want if we click on the home button at the home page itself? What do you want us to do? We can ask it as a question, correct? Whether you want to give that loading functionality or whether you want us to make it like nothing is happening. So what exactly do you want? We can ask that question. There is nothing incorrect or correct about that home page button if we try to click it on the home page itself. Both the functional aspect is correct. Like if it is navigating to the home page, then also it is correct. If it is not navigating and it's just staying idle, then also it is correct. Because the functionality of that home page button was to navigate us to the home page itself. But if we are already in the home page, there is no point in reloading that website. But for some person, they might it might appear as a defect that if I'm trying to click on a button, you should at least give me a loading gesture just to make sure that the functionality is working. So it's about the vision that the customer might have for certain functionalities. So we need to get the clarity. How exactly do you want these kinds of functionalities to be in your website? And once we get the clarity, we can just ask the developers if ask the developers to implement the changes or the functionality that the customer wants. They are not generally bugs, but yes, they are, you can say, confusion, kind of confusion between the actual implementation and the expected implementation. Okay. Now, next point, any usability issues will also be reported. Again, if we are not able to check out that easily, we need if we have to click on checkout button multiple times, then only our website is allowing us to check out. Or if we are not able to if we are not adding two or more items, then we do not get that checkout button or the checkout functionality. So this is a usability issue and we need to report it. Okay. Now, after discovery of defect, it will be retested to verify the reproducibility of the defect. Screenshots with the steps to reproduce are documented. Now, whenever we try to report any issues, we need to have the screenshots as well as the detailed steps to help the developers understand what exactly is the defect and how exactly can they replicate. The reason behind is if you try to if you don't give the details to the developers, how would they try to replicate? They would just write in the comment section that not able to reproduce because they don't have that much detail. Or in some cases, the developers might ping you that, hi, you have raised this particular bug and please explain me how I can replicate this bug. So if that is the case, then your time's gonna be spent explaining the developers how to replicate the issue. So to avoid these unnecessary time consumptions, we what we do is we write down the detailed steps along with the screenshots in the bug itself, just to make sure that the developers were easily able to reproduce that issues. Okay. Now, next point, every day at the end of the test execution, defects encountered will be sent along with the observation. So at the end of every day, uh, suppose if there is a team of 3 testers and they each one is capable of executing 100 test cases. So 300 test cases must be executed at the end of the day, or due to any reasons every tester is executing, let us say, 20 less test cases. In that also there should be 260 test cases executed. So whatever is the status, we need to communicate it to the product as well as the development team that this is the status for our testing today. And if there is any issues, just highlight that these are the issues that we have found today. Please go ahead and fix it. Okay. Now, defects will be documented in Excel. Test scenarios and text cases will be documented in Excel. Again, these 2 points depends upon your company. In few companies, they use Excel. In few companies, they do have their own tracking tools as well as test case writing tools. So it generally depends. But yes, in most cases, you'll be using the Excel only. Okay. Now the next part, roles and responsibilities. Hmm, there's nothing much to describe here. Generally, what exactly would the roles and responsibilities of the persons in testing team would be? Test managers, their responsibilities, escalation, team lead. Team lead has the most work to do. Create a test plan, get the client sign off, interact with application, create and execute test cases, report defects, coordinate with the test execution, verify validity of defect being reported, submit daily issue update and summary defect reports to client, and attend any meetings with the client. Senior test engineer interacts with the application, create and execute test cases and report defects. Test engineer interacts with the application, execute the test cases, report the defect. So these are the responsibilities. There's nothing much to discuss here. As you do gain your experience, you'll start from test engineer at the very bottom. And as you gain your experience, you'll rise up to the level of test manager for the testing team itself. And if you are at the test manager level, then after that you might get VP, or there are many other positions depending upon the company that you're working on. So your responsibility changes as per your role. Now, we need to give the test schedules as well. So when would we start preparing the test plan? We would give a start and an end date. Test case creation, start and end date. Test case execution, because the deadline of the product delivery was already confirmed by the product owner, or the customer has already informed that I want this website in 3 months. So you need to plan it accordingly. That okay, I need 2 weeks to prepare for test plan, 2 weeks to prepare for the test cases, and I need development for the entire e-commerce platform is gonna take 1 month. So I also need, until the development is complete, I won't be able to test the entire flow. So I need a month for testing also. And what is the final submission date? Summary report submission of the entire test case. That date we need to communicate. Now, The next point, that is test deliverables. The followings are to be delivered to client: test plan, detailed scope, project test, schedule, resource requirements. So when we would deliver these to the client, we need to mention the target date, functional test cases. We need to mention the date also, that yes, by this time the functional test cases would be created. So we need to hand over the test cases to the client so that they can also go through the test cases and make sure that okay, every functional aspect is covered. And if they want to or I mean, if they want to make any changes in the test cases, they can just recommend us. And again, we would make those necessary changes and send them back those test cases for their approval. Now, defect report, detailed description of defects, identify along with the screenshot and steps to reproduce on daily basis. So for that, there is no completion date itself. As long as the development takes, we would be raising the issues. So there is no end date or the completion date. Summary report, bug by bug function, summary report, bug by bug, bugs by functional areas and bugs by priority. So at the end of the development cycle, when we have done with the end-to-end testing, we just need to create a summary report also to make sure that yes, these were the issues that were reported and there are this many open issues for these functionalities. Pricing. Generally, pricing is not discussed in most cases, but in few cases there is a section for pricing also. And don't worry, the manager is going to take care of that. Depending upon the resources deployed and for how long, they'll quote a price here. Entry and exit criteria. The below are the entry and exit criteria for every software testing lifecycle. Requirement analysis. Entry criteria. Once the testing team receives the requirement document or details about the project. Exit criteria. List of requirements are explored, understood by the testing teams, and doubts are cleared. So, as soon as the requirement document or the FRS that I had shown you guys earlier is received by the testing team, they can their entry criteria starts. Now they need to go through that entire document and develop their understanding. If they have any questions, they can themselves ask. I mean, they can just raise their concerns to their managers, and their managers in turn gonna ask those concern or questions to the client itself or the product owner if they have any doubts. Okay, the exit criteria would be once the testing team is comfortable that okay, they are able to understand each and every requirement and they don't need any other, I mean, they don't need any other additional information. So they can just give the confirmation that yes, we are able to understand the requirement and want, we don't have any doubts or we don't want any additional information. So that is the exit criteria. Okay. For requirement analysis. Now test planning. The entry criteria. Testable requirement derived from the given requirement document or project details. Okay. That is for the test planning. Now, second point is doubts are cleared. Any doubts that might arise, you can ask your manager. If they are able to answer, well and good. If not, they'll try to ask it from the product owner. Now, exit criteria. Test plan document is signed off by the client. Now, as soon as the test plan document, this document was signed off that yes, this document covers all the information that I have, and I don't think that we do need any extra information, then yes, that is the exit criteria for test planning. Now, test is designing, entry and exit criteria. Test plan document is signed off by the client. That is the entry criteria. Exit criteria, test scenarios, test cases, documents are signed off by the client. So first we need to give the test plan document to the client. If they are okay with the test plan document, then we can start preparing the test cases. Once we are done with the test scenario and test case preparation, we again send those to the client for their approval. Once they have approved, that is then the designing phase is also complete. Now comes the test execution phase. What is the entry criteria here? Test scenarios and test cases documents are signed off by the client. Application is ready for the testing. So this point, as you can see, that this point was the entry exit criteria for our test case design, and it is the entry criteria for our test case execution. Then only after the client has signed off on the document, then we can start our test case execution. First, the document must be signed off by the client. Second, the application should be ready. Even if the client has signed off on the test cases, we need that software, or we need our website to test those test cases, to execute those test cases. So the entry criteria would be to make sure that the application is ready. Until the development is complete, we won't be able to start the test case execution. The exit criteria: test case defect and defect reports are ready. Once the test case report, suppose that there might be a possibility that you executed all the test cases and you did not find any bugs. This is very rare scenario, rare of the rarest, I might add. But suppose that yes, that was the scenario for your first project. So let us assume that you covered you executed all the test cases, but there was no defects here. So you just prepared a report with zero defects, and you send that report to the client itself, and they also went through the test cases earlier. So they also said, okay, we don't have any problem, so you can finish the test case execution process. Or if there are defects, you will have to send those defects to the development team first, for them to make sure that they are fixing those defects as per the priorities that you have assigned. Now, test closure, entry criteria: the test cases reported and defects reported are ready. As soon as we are done with the test case execution, then we had executed all our test cases. On executing our test cases, we might have encountered few issues. Now, as soon as the issues are fixed by the developers, they assign back those issues to us. And now we need to retest those issues, just to make sure that that those issues are fixed and the functionality is working as it was designed, without any possible failures, and the existing functionality is also not breaking. So that is the entry criteria. Now the exit criteria: test summary report. Now, as soon as the bug fixes bug fix is complete, now we need to prepare a test summary. In the test summary, we would describe what exactly are the issues that we encountered during our test case execution. What are the How many issues did the development team fix, and what are the open issues, if there is any, in the software. Once we are done with the summary report, then we can close the test closure phase. The last part: suspension and resumption of suspension and resumption criteria. Based on client decision, we will suspend or resume the project. We will ramp up, ramp down the resource as per client need. So if the client wants that, no, he wants the product or the software to be developed in a shorter duration, so he would say that just ramp up the resources. So suppose that there were 5 developers working on the project. Now the clients want the product to be delivered 1 month prior. So he might go ahead and tell us to increase the developers. So from 5 developers, we'll deploy 10 developers. The cost's gonna double, but as we deployed 10 developers, the time's gonna reduce. So, and similarly, if the testing team consisted of 3 testers, now we would deploy 3 more testers. So the testing team now has 6 testers in total. And now so the cost gonna increase for testing team also. It's gonna increase by twice. And similarly, if the client has some monetary issues, or if the client wants that no, you don't have to deliver this uh, product in a month, you can take your time and deliver it after 6 months. So he'll just tell us to ramp down the development. So instead of 5 developers working on that project, we'll just assign a single developer or 2 developers and a single tester for that project itself. And the single tester is also not for full time. He might be managing multiple projects. So yes, okay, you can just go ahead and work on that. 2 developers in place of 5 or 1 developer in place of 5. So we can ramp up or ramp down depending upon the client's need. Okay. Now comes the tools section. The list of tools that we might be using for our project. Again, the client is billed for these tools. Okay. They'll have to pay. So depending upon the requirement and the organizational structure, we'll be using the tools. Any bug tracking tool, it can be Jira, Linear, or even Excel. Mind map tools, snipping tools, or screenshot tools, Word, Excel, and documents. These are the tools that are mainly concerned with the manual testing. We use any bug tracking tool, but in most cases, we will be using Excel as also. Snipping tools to help us take the screenshot, Word or Excel to document the entire step or process. Now, risk and mitigation. Now, if you are trying to complete any project, I think we are way past our time right now. So we must stop here, I guess. We'll discuss the risk and mitigation strategy tomorrow along with the approvals. So now, what you guys need to do is you'll be getting the FR document as well as the test plan document. Go through these documents, start going through these documents in detail, okay, and get an idea how exactly is the document, what exactly are the document, I mean, functionalities that are covered in the FRs, and how exactly are we trying to approach our test planning. Okay, you need to study these documents on your own, and if you do have any doubts, you can ask in our next class, or whenever you do get the time, feel free to ask, but you need to go through these documents. And tomorrow we'll be going through these topics, and from tomorrow we'll start working on the test cases. First we'll go through the test scenarios, then we'll be going through test cases. Okay, any doubts?
No doubt from my side.
Okay, great. I guess Rajan has dropped from the class, so no worries, you can get the recording, I hope. So we'll be sharing the documents with you guys. If no doubts, then we'll be closing our today's lecture.